Welcome back to Going Walkabout. We've spent the last 3 years traveling, sold it all, and took to the road, Baja backroads to cities like Mexico City. We've just come back from 4 months in Mexico and Central America, and we're surprised to notice certain things really stand out to us. In this video, we'll explore 5 culture shocks that quite frankly surprised us coming back to the United States. Stay till the end for the biggest shocker at number 1. Let's jump in at number 5. So as promised, I'll jump in at number 5. One of the first shockers, and this is the second or third time this has happened to us, but certainly one of the things that we notice is how polite the people in Mexico and the Latin American countries are. They greet each other every day, not only just the basic hello, it's also the, good morning, good evening, good afternoon. And certainly they will say, have a great day, have success during the day. And so that's really nice to make eye contact and have those exchanges. I noticed very quickly when I got back, just going for a walk, how many people I said good morning to that didn't even make eye contact with me. I'm not sure what's happened, but I do notice that there has been a diminishing of that kind of politeness and so forth in American society, certainly over the last 10 years, and I'm not sure how that's happened. Along with the politeness, we've also seemed to lose our lack of some kind of like everyday kindnesses. One of the things that we notice a lot is that the people in places like Costa Rica, Guatemala, Mexico, many of them have very little. We understand that many of these countries are very poor countries, right on the bubble of being third world countries. And yet, you will see every day acts of kindness of these people who have very little, giving to other people who have less. And that is incredibly heartwarming and something I'm not seeing so much anymore in our society here. And I'll say Southern California, but I think it's something that's impacting all of the states at this time. So the next shocker, so this would be number 4, is the healthcare. And what we find is when we're in a place like Mexico, we can go on Yelp, and that's how we usually find many of the things we need is on Yelp. And you can Yelp a doctor for whatever specific thing you need. It's quite easy to find the doctor and to make an appointment. You can usually get an appointment within 24 to 48 hours. That's pretty amazing. We don't have insurance, travel insurance, and so we rely on paying out of pocket. And we have found that, again, doctor visits are $50, $75. A great example is my husband had to go, he had strained his leg muscle and it was in a lot of pain. And so we made an appointment to see a physician, a specialist, sports specialist in Mexico City. It was a lady and she was incredibly qualified. She had her diplomas on the wall and everything. We waited maybe 5 minutes to see her, and she spent a full hour with my husband. She explained to him what was wrong with his strain that he had, and then she spent another half hour going over what he needed to do and the exercises and everything. And then on top of all of that, her bedside manner was amazing because she actually followed up with him with phone calls for the next 3 to 4 days. And said, hey, if it doesn't get better, please come back and we'll do some deeper dives on some other things that you can work on. But these are all things that we don't experience anymore with our doctors here in Southern California. My doctor has 4,000 patients. And while she's a lovely person, the most I've ever spoken to her is 10 minutes. And so we've really lost that, and yet we pay a lot for our medical care in America. So the shocker to me is the high standard of medical care that you can get in a country like Mexico, and you can even afford to pay out of pocket, and it's still better medical care than, or more personalized than what you get here. As an add-on to that, it's always difficult if you've got a cold, maybe it's a really bad one and you want to see a doctor and you want to be prescribed something, but getting an appointment's going to take a day or two, getting to see the doctor might take another day or two. In Mexico, they've figured this out and they have pharmacies that are called farmacias similares. And what that is the farmacy similares have a doctor on hand 75% of the time. So if you were to go in with a bad cold or flu, The doctor is there to talk to you and then can prescribe something that is accurate for your particular ailment. This has served over 2.3 million people in Mexico to date this year, and it's only $2 a visit. So if you see the doctor, it's $2. Again, very affordable healthcare for the masses, which we happen to be part of when we're in Mexico. So we found that to be really nice and a pleasant surprise. At number 3, we have something that a lot of people mention when they come back from staying either overseas or in different countries, and that's that the produce tastes so good. And in Mexico and Central America, the produce is unbelievable. Tomatoes have that lovely tomato taste. They're not watery or taste watery. Pineapples, my husband can gorge himself on pineapple. It's so sweet and succulent every single time. The same with papayas and mangoes. I'm pretty sure this is because they still do a lot of very small farms, and even those small farms help supplement the supermercados and so forth. And because of that, the small farming, it's not this huge corporate farming, the land is tilled in a way that nurtures nutrients, and those nutrients are then instilled in the vegetables. The other thing that I read that was very interesting is that their food produce stays inside, in this case, Mexico. And because of that, it's not transported very far. And because of that, they're allowed to let food ripen. So many times what we get in grocery stores is not completely ripe fruit or vegetable. They'll artificially ripen it, and that takes a lot of the flavor out. And so that's one of the shockers that we get every time we come back to the States, is trying to find that lovely succulent vegetables and fruit that we get when we're in Mexico or Costa Rica or Guatemala. At number 2, we have, they don't have a proliferation of guns. And I understand the police have guns and the military has guns, and yes, the cartels have guns, and I actually did a video on the cartels. You can look at it over here. But in reality, people don't have guns. And because of that, you're not worried about there being school shootings. You're not worried about holdups at banks. You're not worried about people getting mowed down in a grocery store or road rage or things of that nature, because the majority of people do not have weapons of any kind. And every time I come back to the States, it's the shocker of seeing so many people with guns everywhere, or being told people have guns in their cars and in their handbags and so forth. So that's always something that is a big shock to me in coming back to the United States after being away. So here we are at number 1. And I went through the others pretty quickly because number 1 is pretty beefy. And that's, for me, one of the biggest shockers is to see or to be in another country where I see so much progress. And let me explain that in more detail. Over the last year alone, Mexico has built a train that goes from Veracruz, which is in the Atlantic side, to Oaxaca, which is on the Pacific side. This train will take commuters and so forth, but more importantly, it's going to take exports and imports. So the train is virtually going to be competing with the Panama Canal. Now, this is huge for people who are, or countries that are exporter-importers, to not have to use the Panama Canal and be able to use a different source. But what an ingenious thing that they've done to take advantage of their geographics, in as much as the center or the end of their country is very narrow, and to be able to supply something like that. It gives jobs, it allows import-export fees to go down because there's competition with the Panama Canal. So that's one thing that I thought was quite incredible that they've done, and it's open now, and while I thought, wow, that's fantastic, that's some serious heavy lifting, they actually were doing another thing in tandem, and that's called the Maya train. And if you've been to Cancun, Cozumel, that area, very heavily jungled, a lot of people weren't getting to some of the smaller communities that are in that area, and so they built the Maya train. And now you can virtually take a train around that whole area as a tourist or as somebody who lives there. So what a tremendous thing to supply to help improve business to many of these smaller communities, along with enhancing tourism in a lot of places that aren't getting as much tourism as Cozumel and Cancun. So that was another thing that I was blown away by, and by the way, we'll be going there in the new year, so stay tuned because I'll be doing a whole video on that train. And as though that's not enough, but just before we left, we saw that they announced on the news that they're going to be doing a train from Mexico City to Querétaro. And Querétaro is where a lot of people fly into if they want to go to San Miguel Allende. The reason I mention this is because I would say in Mexico, one of the largest expat communities is San Miguel de Allende, and it's growing all the time. And so now, instead of having to possibly take an Uber from Mexico City or even fly from Mexico City to Querétaro, you can actually take the train. And this is going to be so helpful for people who live in Mexico, as well as expats who move into the area, because you no longer have to organize a 4 or 5 hour car ride, which isn't easy to do. It's a long way. So again, I feel like they're thinking ahead all the time on things to help make the community better, transportation better, and the lives of their people better, along with people who invest in their country, like the expats who move there. On a more serious note, I guess the reason I was shocked by these things so much is because I feel like my country, the United States, is in a holding pattern. I don't hear about any big things like that happening. If you do and you know about them, please write them in the comments below. But I know in the state of California, we tried to get a train from Los Angeles to Palm Springs, and that never went through. We've tried to get a train from Los Angeles to San Francisco. That didn't go through. We don't seem to ever be making progress on things that could truly enhance people's way of life and make mass transportation a lot more affordable and easy. And then the other thing I notice is that it seems like one administration gets in, their plans get okayed, nobody is able to actually commit to those plans and start doing them. And then the next administration gets in and all of those plans are completely wiped out, and it's a blank slate that starts all over again. So we don't seem to be moving forward with things that I feel like would truly help most Americans. It feels like we're caught in a cycle of doing and undoing, and it's very unproductive. So that's a shocker that I really noticed this time coming back to the state. By all means, I would love to get your comments. Please put your comments below. If I'm incorrect and there's some amazingly big things that have been happening in the States that I don't know about, please let me and everyone else know, because that would actually be a really positive thing I'd love to hear about. With that said, please keep in mind, these are my thoughts after having been away most of this year and certainly been in Central America and Mexico. I want to thank you again. If you've subscribed, thank you so much. If you've enjoyed the video and you found it interesting or helpful, a thumbs up is always really appreciated. Or as I always say, better yet, subscribe. Again, thank you so much for watching, and cheers for now.